Good morrow, scholars. Welcome to Iguana Theater, starring Iggy and Ben Iguana. There I am. Good morrow, scholars. Welcome back to 5 Minutes at Freddy's, The Twisted Ones. I'm terribly sorry that I missed a couple of days. Well, I say a couple. But a few days. I've been really tired. I hadn't been able to sleep very well, and I couldn't bring myself to read out loud for about an hour, and then another hour, and I don't know. Anyway, we are in chapter 9, page 172, I think. I'm pretty sure. Yes. Professor Treadwell seemed restless. Her face was calm as ever, but as the students worked, she paced back and forth across the auditorium stage, the heels of her shoes making a repetitive click. I hate that sound so much. Artie poked Charlie, nodded toward the professor, and quickly mimed screaming. Charlie smiled and turned back to her own work. She didn't mind the sound. The professor's sharp, regular steps were like a metronome, marking the time. She reread the first question. Describe the difference between a conditional loop and an infinite loop. Charlie sighed. She knew the answer. It just seemed pointless to write it down. A conditional loop happens only when certain conditions, she started, then scratched it out and sighed again. Staring out over, the heads of the other students. She could see the face of the wolf again, shimmering back and forth between its two faces, the illusion and the frame beneath it. Its eyes stared into her own, as if reading something deep inside her. Who are you? Who are you supposed to be? She thought. She had never seen it before, and it worried her. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza didn't have a wolf. Charlie had a near photographic memory, which isn't technically a thing. She'd realized last year. It was the reason she had such recall of even her early childhood, but she didn't remember the wolf. That's silly, she told herself. There's plenty you don't remember. And yet her memories of her father's workshop were so strong. The smell, the heat. Her father bent over his workbench, and the place in the corner where she didn't like to look. It was all so present within her, so immediate. Even the things she didn't remember without prompting, like the old Fredbear's family diner. It had been instantly familiar as soon as she'd seen them. Yet these creatures had no foothold in her memory. She didn't know them, but they clearly knew her. Dun dun dun. Why were they entombed in the back of the house like that? Why not just destroyed? Her father's deep attachment to his creations had never outweighed his pragmatism. If something didn't work, he dismantled it for parts. He had done the same with Charlie's own toys. I stressed that incorrectly. She blinked, suddenly recalling. He held it out to her. A little green... Oh, I hate this part. Little green frog with horn-rimmed glasses over its bulging eyes. Charlie looked at it skeptically. No, she said. Don't you want to see what he does? Her father protested, and she crossed her arms and shook her head. No, she mumbled. I don't like the big eyes. Despite her protests, her father set the frog on the ground in front of her and pressed a button hidden beneath the plastic at its neck. It rotated its head from side to side, then suddenly leaped into the air. Charlie screamed and jumped back, and her father rushed to pick her up. I'm sorry, sweetheart, it's okay, he whispered. I didn't mean to startle you. I don't like the eyes, she sobbed against his neck, and he held her for a long moment, then set her down and picked up the frog. He put it on his workbench, took a short knife from the shelf, and sliced its skin along its entire length. Charlie clapped a hand over her mouth and made a small squeaking sound, watching wide-eyed as he carelessly peeled the green casing off of the robot. The plastic split with a loud cracking noise in the quiet workshop. The frog's legs kicked helplessly. I didn't mean it, she said hoarsely. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, Daddy. Oh. She was speaking aloud, but it was mostly air. Her voice was somehow constrained, like in dreams where she tried to scream, but nothing came out. Her father was intent on his work and didn't seem to hear her. The stripped-down robot lay prone before him on the workbench. He patted it and it made a horrible twitch. There we go. Its back legs kicking out uselessly, repeating the motion of its leap into the air. It tried again, more frantically, like it was in pain. Ah, man, this bothers me so much, and I don't know why. Well, I mean, I know why, but you know what I mean. Wait, Daddy, don't hurt him, Charlie mouthed, trying and failing to force out the sound. Her father selected a tiny screwdriver and began to work on at the frog's head. That sounds like it should be a pub name. Deftly unscrewing something on each side, he removed the back of the skull to reach inside. Its whole body convulsed. Charlie ran to her father's side and grabbed his leg, tugging at the knee of his pants. Please, she cried, her voice returning. He disconnected something, and the skeleton went completely limp. Joints that had been stiff collapsed into a slump of parts. There we go. The eyes, which Charlie had not even noticed, were lit, dimmed, flickered, and went dark. She let go of her father and moved back into the recess of the workshop. Putting both hands over her mouth again so that he would not hear her cries, he began to methodically dismantle the frog. Ugh. Maybe there is something wrong with the entire family. Wait a minute. I hope it doesn't turn out that Afton and her father are related. Charlie shook her head, pulling herself back to the present. The child's guilt still clung to her, like a weight at her chest. She gently pressed her hand there. My father was pragmatic, she thought. Parts were expensive, and he didn't waste them on things that didn't work. She forced her mind to the problem at hand. So why would he have buried them alive? Buried who alive? Artie hissed, as she turned, startled. I'm so startled. I don't know. Shouldn't you be busy doing something? She said hastily, mortified to have spoken aloud. The creatures had been buried in a chamber like a mausoleum, hidden in the walls of the house. Her father hadn't wanted to destroy them for some reason, and he wanted them nearby. Why? So he could keep an eye on them? Or did he even know they were there? Did Dave somehow hide them there without his knowledge? She shook her head. It didn't matter. What mattered was what the creatures were going to do next. Oops. Huh. She closed her eyes again, trying to envision the wolf-like creature. She'd only seen it for that moment, as it disgorged the woman inside it and hovered between states, its illusion flickering like a faulty light bulb. Charlie held on to the image, kept it frozen in her mind. She'd been fixated first on the victim, then on the wolf's eyes. But she still had seen the rest of it. Now she pictured the scene, ignoring the wolf's gaze, ignoring the panic that had seized her, the others shouting and running around her. She watched it happen again and again, picturing the chest sliding open one tooth-like rib at a time, then the woman falling out. She realized she had a better picture of the same thing stored away. The creature in the tomb, just before it tried to swallow her. She visualized its chest opening, searching her mind to see what lay beyond it, the hideous mouth. There we go. Wait a minute. Inside the cavernous chest. Then she bent her head over the exam book and began to draw. Time, called one of the graduate students. The other three began to march up the aisles, collecting blue books one by one. Charlie only had a half-sentence in answer to the first question, and it was crossed out. The rest of the book was a mess of mechanisms and monsters. Just before the teaching assistant reached her, she quietly tucked the book under her arm. She exited the row, blending in with the students who had already finished. She didn't speak to anyone on the way out, drifting more than walking. Focused on her own thoughts as her body carried her aimlessly down the familiar hallway. I remember one time when I was in high school walking to class, I completely forgot what my schedule was and I had no idea where I was supposed to go. But it was the middle of the school year. It should have just been muscle memory at that point, and it wasn't. I had a mini panic attack. Eventually, I just wandered into the class. So I guess technically it was muscle memory. Huh, anyway. Where was I? She found a bench and sat. Did I say that right? I don't know. She looked around at the passing students, chatting to one another or lost in thoughts of their own. It was as if a wall had risen up, circling only her, completely isolating her from everything around her. She opened her book again to the page where she'd spent her test time scribbling. There, staring back at her, were the faces she understood. The faces of monsters and murderers with blank eyes that pierced right through her, even from her own sketches. "What are you trying to tell me?" She stood, clenching her book, then took one last look at her surroundings. It felt as though she were saying goodbye to a chapter of her life. Another passage that would become nothing more than a haunting memory. Ugh. "Charlie?" "Sorry, I don't know." John's voice said from nearby. She glanced around, trying to find him through the thick flow of students exiting the building. She finally spotted him off to the side of the stairs. "Oh, hey," she called and made her way over. "What are you doing here? Not that I'm not glad to see you, I just thought you had to work," she added hastily, trying to settle the whirling thoughts in her head. "Clay called me. He tried your dorm, but, you were here, I guess. The woman from last night. She's going to be okay." He said he went to the next area, the next spot on the map, and drove around. John glanced at the crowd of students streaming past them and lowered his voice. "You know, the next place they're going to." "I know," Charlie said quickly, forestalling the explanation. "What did he find?" "Well, it's a lot of empty space and fields, mostly. One plot for future development, but it's vacant. He thinks we should focus on tomorrow instead. He has a plan." Charlie looked at him blankly. "We're going to have to fight them," he said at last. "We both know that. But it won't be tonight." Charlie nodded. "So what do we do tonight, then?" she asked, helplessly. "Dinner?" John suggested. "You can't be serious." Charlie's tone dropped. "I know there's a lot going on, but we still need to eat, right?" Charlie stared at the ground, collecting her thoughts. "Sure, dinner." She smiled. "This is pretty awful. This is all pretty awful, there you go. It might be nice to get my mind off of it, even if it's just for an evening." "Okay," he said, and shifted awkwardly, much like I'm doing now. "I'm going to run home and change then. I won't be long." "John, none of this has to involve you," Charlie said softly. She gripped the straps of her backpack with both hands, as if they were tethering her to the ground. "What are you talking about?" John looked at her, his self-consciousness gone. "Not mine." "It doesn't have to involve anybody. It's me they're looking for." "We don't know that for sure," he said, and put a hand on her shoulder. "You have to get that out of your head for a while. You'll drive yourself crazy." John smiled briefly, but he still looked worried. "Try to do something relaxing for a bit. Take a nap or something. I'll see you for dinner, okay? Same restaurant, at 7? "Okay," she echoed. He looked at her helplessly and gave a distressed smile, then turned and went. He's a good guy. Jessica was gone when Charlie got back to the dorm. She closed the door behind her with a sense of relief. She needed quiet. She needed to think. And she needed to move. She looked around, paralyzed for a moment. Her system of piling everything up as she used it was functional day to day, but when searching for something she hadn't touched in weeks, the system broke down. Got that right. "Where is it?" she muttered, scanning the room. Her eyes lit on Theodore's head, lying tumbled up against the leg of her bed. She picked it up and brushed off the dust, stroking his long ears until they were clean, if matted and patchy. "You used to be so soft," she told the rabbit's head. She set it on the bed, propped up on her pillow. "I guess I did too," she added and sighed. There we go. Have you seen my duffel bag? She asked the dismembered toy. Maybe under the bed? She got down on her knees to check. It was there, all the way at the far side. Excuse me. Crushed by a pile of books and clothing that had fallen through the space between the bed and the wall. Shirley wriggled under the bed until she could snag the strap, then dragged it out and set it on top. It was empty. She dumped out the contents as soon as she arrived, a harbinger of the messy habits to follow. She grabbed her toothbrush and toothpaste and zipped them into the bag's side pocket. I lied to John, she said. No, that's not right. I let him lie to me. He has to know it's me they're coming for. Yeah. We all do, and this isn't going to stop. She picked out clothing from what she thought was the clean pile, pulling out a t-shirt and jeans and socks and underwear, and shoving them emphatically, there we go, into her bag as she spoke. Why else would they be coming in this direction? She asked the rabbit. But how would they even know? She threw 2 textbooks into the bag and patted her pocket, reassuring herself that the disc and the diagnostic keyboard were there. She zipped up the bag and tilted her head, meeting Theodore's plastic eyes. It's not just that, she said. This thing. She measured the disc in her hand and studied it anew. It made John sick, but it sings a song to me. She broke off, unsure of what that meant about her. I don't know if I've ever known anything with quite such certainty, she said quietly. But I have to do this. Afton made them, and Afton took Sammy. When I was with John, I could feel something in the house. It had to be him. It was like the missing part of me was there, closer than it had ever been. I couldn't quite reach it. And I think those monsters are the only things in the world that might have the answers. Theodore stared back at her, unmoved. It's me they want. No one else is going to die because of me. She sighed. At least I have you to protect me, right? She slung the bag over her back and turned to go, then paused. She grabbed Theodore's head by the ears and held him up to her own eye level. I think today I need all the support I can get, she whispered, and shoved him into her bag, then hurried out of the dorm to her car. Ugh. The map was in the glove compartment. Charlie took it out and spread it out in front of her, glancing at it momentarily, then putting it away with confidence. She drove slowly out of the lot, Though she passed people and other cars on her way, she felt as though she was just a part of the background, unseen to the world. By the time she and her car slipped out of sight, she'd already be forgotten. The sky was cloudy. It gave the world a sense of waiting. It seemed like Charlie had the road to herself, and peacefulness overtook her. She'd been preoccupied with isolation today, but the speed and openness were comforting. She didn't feel alone. I do. The tree line seemed to race across the field when she watched it from the window, an illusion made by the speeding car. She began to feel as though there were something in the woods matching her speed, darting through the blur of branches, a silent companion, someone coming to tell her everything that she ever wanted to know. I'm coming, she whispered. The street dwindled from a highway to a country road. I almost said crunchy. I'm hungry. Then to a gravel path. What the? It rose up a long hill, and as Charlie slowly ascended, she could see clusters of houses and cars in distant, more populated areas. She turned a corner and left it all behind. There were no more houses, no more cars. The rows of trees, almost at teeth, had been replaced with lines of stumps and piles of brush, accompanied by the occasional blank billboard that, presumably, would one day announce what was to come. Slabs of concrete and half-paved driveways interrupted the countryside, and an abandoned bulldozer sat in the distance. Charlie took Theodore's head from her bag and set it on the passenger seat. "Stay alert," she said. Then she saw it. A single ranch-style house stood at the center of it all, surrounded by bulldozed land and the bare rib cages of half-built houses jutting from the ground. It was out of place, painted, fenced, and even planted with flowers in the garden. That's when it made sense. A show house. The road stopped a few yards into the development, replaced by worn-down tracks in the dirt. Excuse me. Where the machinery came in and out. Charlie slowed the car to a stop. "Even you can't follow me this time," she said to the rabbit's head, then got out and closed the door, giving Theodore a smile through the window. Charlie walked the trail slowly. The hulking, unfinished frames of the houses seemed to watch her reproachfully, there we go, as she trespassed. The gravel crunched under her feet in the silence. There wasn't even a breeze. Everything was still. She stopped when she reached higher ground and Obi-Wan, and surveyed her surroundings for a moment. Everything was disturbed. Everything was upturned. She glanced above her as a single bird passed overhead, barely visible from its soaring height. Her eyes returned to the wasteland. "You're here somewhere, aren't you?" At last she reached the lone, finished house. It was set at the center of a neat square of perfectly trimmed grass, towering above its stooped, half-constructed neighbors. Charlie why do I do that every time? Stared at the lawn for a moment before realizing that it must be fake, just like whatever furniture was inside. She didn't try the door right away, instead going around to the backyard. It was laid out in a neat square of astroturf. I haven't seen that in a while. Just like the front, but here the illusion had been ruined. Ugh. Ragged strips of grass had been torn up. The place radiated a sense of distress, now eerily familiar. Eerily. Charlie just stared for a moment. Certainty, dang it, pulsing through her. She clenched her jaw. "Why?" Then went back around to the front door. It opened easily, without even a whisper of a sound. That's not good. And Charlie went inside. It was dark in the house. She flipped a light switch experimentally, and it illuminated the whole place in an instant. A fully furnished living room greeted her, complete with leather chairs and a couch, and even candles on the fireplace mantel. She started to close the front door behind her, then hesitated, leaving it ajar. She walked farther into the living room. There was an L-shaped couch. We used to have one of those. And a widescreen TV. Hey, I'm surprised it hasn't been stolen, she thought. But when she went closer, she saw why. It wasn't real. There were no cords or cables coming from it. The whole place had a surreal quality, almost of mockery. Call it mockery, I don't know. She walked slowly into the dining room, her feet clapping against the polished hardwood floor. Inside was a beautiful mahogany, very expensive, dining set. She bent over to look at the underside of the table. Balsa wood, she said, grinning to herself. It was a light, airy wood made for model airplanes, not furniture. She could probably lift the table over her head if she wanted to. That'd be fun. Let's see, where was I? Down a short hallway from the dining room was a kitchen with gleaming new appliances, or at least imitations of them. There was also a back door in the kitchen. She unlocked it and pushed it open halfway, leaning outside and looking again at the expensive, tortured landscape. There were several stone steps here, leading down into a small garden. She stepped back inside, being sure to leave the door hanging slightly open. There was a second long hall off of the living room. This led to bedrooms and a small room fashioned into an office or a den, complete with tall bookshelves, a desk, and an inbox tray full of empty file folders. Charlie sat down in the desk chair, finding herself enchanted by the utterly surface imitation of life. She spun the chair once, then stood again, not wanting to get distracted. I have a similar problem. There was a door to the outside here, too, though it was oddly placed beside the desk. Charlie opened it, fiddling with the latch until she was sure it would stay open. She continued on her way, walking through the house systematically, unlocking and opening each window she came to. Then she went down to the basement, where a storm cellar hung over a set of steep stone stairs. Try saying that 5 times fast. She opened that as well, leaving the doors gaping wide. Outside, dark had fallen. There were several bedrooms, each furnished and made up with bright curtains and silk sheets, and a large bathroom with marble sinks. Charlie turned the faucet to see if there was water, but nothing happened. Not even the grinding of pipes trying and failing. There was a master bedroom with an enormous bed, a guest room that somehow looked even less lived in than the rest of the house. Wait a minute. And a nursery with a life-size menagerie painted on the wall, and a mobile hanging above a crib. Charlie glanced inside each, then went back into the master bedroom. Huh. The bed was wide and covered in a light canopy of white mosquito netting. The covers were white as well, and the moon shone through the window to illuminate the pillows. It had an uncanny effect, as if whoever slept there would be on display. Charlie went to the window and leaned out, breathing in the soothing, cool night air. She looked up at the sky. It was still cloudy. There were only a few stars visible. She'd been moving with such grim, impulsive energy until now, but this part would be agonizing. Long hours might pass before anything happened, and all she could do was wait. A nervous fluttering began to fill her stomach. She wanted to pace, or even to run away, but she closed her eyes and clenched her jaw. It's me they want. At last, Charlie pulled herself away from the window. She packed pajamas in the bag out in the car, but this sterile house full of props and imitations felt too strange for her to actually dress for bed. Instead, she just took off her sneakers and considered her bedtime rituals complete. She laid down on the bed and tried to conjure her nightmares, gathering up those final moments with Sammy and holding them close to her like a talisman. Hold on, she thought. I'm coming. John checked his watch. She's just running late. But she was late last time, too. The waitress caught his eye, and he shook his head. Of course, last time she showed up covered in filth. He'd already called her dorm room, but the phone just rang and rang. He'd seen what he thought was an answering machine when he was there, but realized only as he was waiting for it to pick up that it could have been one of Charlie's projects, or some piece of discarded junk. The waitress refilled his water glass, and he smiled at her. She shook her head. "Same girl?" she asked gently. John let out an involuntary laugh. "Yes, same girl," he said. "But it's okay. She's not standing me up. She's just busy. College-like, you know?" "Of course. Let me know if you want to order." She gave him another look of pity and went away. He shook his head. Suddenly, he saw Charlie's hands on her backpack straps, holding on so tight that her knuckles had gone white. "They're coming for me," she'd said. Charlie wasn't the type to wait around patiently for something to happen to her. He got up and walked urgently to the payphone at the back of the restaurant. Clay picked up on the first ring. Good on him. I like Clay. He was iffy in the first book, but this one he's much better. Wait. You'll see. Clay, it's John. Have you heard from Charlie? No, what's wrong? Nothing, John said reflexively. I mean, I don't know. She was supposed to meet me, and she's 24 minutes late. I know it's not a lot, but she said something earlier that was bothering me. I think she might do something stupid. Why did I say it like that? Where are you? John gave him the address. I'll be right there, Clay said, and hung up before John could reply. Whew, okay. So that was chapter 9. I'm going to try and record another chapter before I leave for work and have them uploaded. And then tomorrow I'll do 2 chapters of Five Nights at Freddy's, the twisted ones. And again, I'm really sorry that I missed so many days. I just couldn't bring myself to get out of bed and record. Mostly because I was actually asleep. You know how it is. Anywho, it's fair warning. Thursdays are going to be rough because I hang out with some friends every Wednesday night. And we don't usually leave until about 4 in the morning. So I might skip Thursdays just so that I can get enough sleep and then be ready for the next day and the next day. And anyway. I think that's about it. Iggy's gonna need a bath. I'm gonna go feed the turtles. And then I have to pick up some makeup for my mom and my sister. Anyway, let me know if you have any suggestions on what to read, any insight into this book that I might have missed, even on my second go-around. And until next time, goodbye, everybody. Seriously, though, the family is messed up.